And so you talked about getting your visa, your E2 visa for the US. And so you've actually made the move there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what made you choose the place you chose?
Well, to relocate to Huntsville, Alabama. And we visited this location.
Which seems really random.
Yeah, it does seem really random. One of the things we loved, it had all 4 seasons, right? But not too much of all 4 seasons. It's like just enough, right?
Not like Huntsville, Ontario, those 4 seasons.
Yeah, like I personally love economies of scale. If you think about, having just one house, you still need a cleaner for that house, a handyman, the same teams, right? And I find that the sweet spots for being able to hire a full-time team is about 5 units. That way your handyman, your boots on the ground person, your cleaner can be busy enough of the time to focus and dedicate to you. And that allows you to grow and scale your business. Plus, it gives you a variety of ways to take care of your guests.
Welcome to the Little Did You Know podcast. My name is Morgan Little. My guest today is Donalta Hall, super guest and Airbnb Superhost. She's going to school us on everything short-term rental. Stay tuned. Donalta.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Good. Maybe flip that a little bit. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
I asked you, if you are, have long answers, if you like to talk a lot, and you said you give very clear and concise answers, and I love it. So
okay,
that's great. So you are an Airbnb Superhost specialist, super guest. How did you land on Airbnb as your investment strategy? Let's start there.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So Airbnb kind of happened accidentally, organically. My husband and I, we were doing house hacking. So we essentially, we didn't know much about real estate. We were trying to figure it out on our own. So we're able to, get some equity out of the property we were living in and get our house that we wanted to house hack. And so we, moved to this new residence and we were renovating this property. He was essentially acting as the general contractor. Okay. So we wanted to be close by. I mean, literally we lived in Mississauga and the house was in downtown Toronto, but Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, when you're working and you have to do commuting, it seems like it's the furthest place. So yeah, we decided to stay in Toronto and we ended up renting out a room on Airbnb because it was close to the property. And that was really the beginning of it. The house that we stayed in was on the same street, about a 5-minute walk. It was a tiny little house, 2 bedrooms upstairs, and the host lived in the basement, the unfinished basement. It was getting 5-star reviews on Airbnb. She was a super host. So, we booked, no questions. We thought it would be amazing. When we got there, the kitchen was under perpetual renovations. There was no hot water. Our roommate, the other person who had rented a room, used to have to go shower at her yoga studio. Oh. And this is deep February, those days where you wear 2 pairs of long johns. Yeah,
that's I don't even want to think about it.
Toronto weather, right?
Yeah.
And when you're outside, you have to put on your hood and wrap your scarf around you. It was one of the coldest days. But yeah, generally there was no hot water. And
she had Superhost status?
Yeah, Superhost status. But it was just goes to show at the time, this is before Airbnb was really popular, there's a really need and demand for it, right? And with that, we were able to say we can absolutely do this. So we renovated our property. And when we had finished renovating our property, we were really in a tough financial situation. We weren't able to flip it for what we wanted to at the time. So we decided to try a different strategy, which was refinance. So we refinanced the property and we were looking for renters to rent it out. We had went over time, over budget on this renovation, and we couldn't even rent it for what we had to cover. So that's when we decided to try Airbnb.
I think that's a very common scenario, that whole thing, over budget on renovations, can't get the rent you want. What do we do? So this is a good way to pivot, right? And so that place that you stayed in specifically, was that kind of the moment where you're like, wait, we should do Airbnb because we could easily do this better? or were you already considering Airbnb and you're like, okay, now we know how to do this better after being here?
That's a really good question. So it was really, we thought we would be living in the home and we would use our secondary suite that we were adding at the time as an Airbnb to cover the mortgage.
Right.
And when we came along refinancing, we realized that couldn't even cover it. So we were really concerned about, wanting to rent out the house and having tenants, because during that time we had rented out our original single family home and they turned it into a rooming house. That again was recently renovated and the place was completely trashed.
Yeah.
So we were really scared that our brand new renovation would potentially get destroyed, that we wouldn't get our payments that we needed. And when it came time to sell, we wouldn't be able to get the tenant out. So Airbnb seemed like the perfect option. We were able to keep our property in like new condition. And we figured, we could, with what we were renting that particular room for, which was like $1,000 a month, we had 4 bedrooms. So we could at least do, $4,000 and cover all of the additional expenses that we had. So that was our worst case scenario. And it seemed like a pretty good option.
Okay, awesome. And so prior to that, you were doing flipping, or what was your kind of journey into real estate investing in the first place?
So I was a corporate professional. I was a consultant for many, many years, but real estate had always made sense to me. It, like my family, they bought a home and it was just one of those things. You grow up, you buy a house. My biggest dream was to own a triplex one day because it just always made sense.
Yeah.
I would live in one unit and rent out the other 2. So have one to cover my household expenses and the other one for my income. It seemed like the perfect way to retire. So real estate always made sense. So just was in a place where we wanted to try something new and get ahead, and watched enough HGTV to be experts in flipping property, right? The most prestigious university when it comes to real estate at the time, and so decided to jump in.
Yeah. It's funny how like the dream of like getting a triplex one day can easily grow from there once you start to learn about the possibilities with real estate investing. Okay. And so it sounds like you weren't having the greatest success at first till you've kind of figured out the Airbnb thing. At what point did you figure out, I need mentorship, I need help, there's communities out there, and go down that journey? And then where we met in Wealth Genius, you got to that point. So tell me kind of how that went.
Yeah. So, well, basically at that time, real estate and Airbnb really took off. We had started during the worst possible time, the pandemic. And despite all the challenges, we were able to keep our places booked, and we realized we were getting above market rents. We were able to cover our bills from the reno, the rent that we needed once we refinanced. And with just doing that, we were able to also ride that housing wave, right? When that property kind of increased in value, we were able to take more money out and get another property. And after just having a handful of property, I was making more than I was making at my full-time job.
Okay.
So
you were still working during...
Yeah, we were working during all of this. And when I realized that, I was like, hey, there's a system here. There's a process. Like if you kind of, have this price and you can rent it for this, you have a formula that you can repeat. And that's when I really started to share with people about Airbnb and the impact it had on me. And I was able to leave my 6-figure corporate job and pursue the business full time. Being a corporate consultant and managing and developing remote and international teams, I was able to scale my Airbnb business because it was something I was familiar and comfortable with, right? Although it was a totally different sector, I was able to apply the same skills of business development and, building teams to my Airbnb business. And we just started to expand. We expanded first in Canada and bought as many properties as we could personally afford, and then started trying different strategies in different locations. Part of what I loved about the Airbnb was the fact that I always had a dream to, own beautiful luxury properties all around the world. And that was kind of how it started out with the Toronto property. It was a dream. I wanted to have a property right downtown, finally have that option to afford and live downtown. And for a period of time, Airbnb allowed us to do that. And, it kind of took that and applied that to the benefit of having that lifestyle, and started to get places in other cities in the US and, Mexico and the Caribbean.
Amazing. Cool. You didn't answer my question at all,
okay.
which was about mentorship, but that's
about
all.
Mentorship,
but I love all that. Anyways, but yes, about mentorship.
Yeah.
At what point did you see the need for it, see the value in it? And did you get directly into Wealth Genius? Did you start somewhere else?
So I did it alone for a really long time, and I really struggled. And I actually went on a Wealth Genius retreat, and it was transformative. That is when my business blew up.
Okay.
It was really that Wealth Genius mastermind where I was able to collaborate with amazing investors, like-minded people, and I was able to take all the information that they gave me and, shifted my mindset and was leverage the strategies to really grow my business.
Right.
But at some point I kind of hit a wall. I started, I wasn't able to go as far and as fast. And it was also very lonely. I was at a point where, I was doing everything myself and I didn't have colleagues. It was me alone running this company. And I'm, connecting and looking around at the people I went on the retreat with, and their portfolios had skyrocketed. They'd gone above and beyond what I had, done in the same period of time. They were getting, 200 door multifamily units and were building huge portfolios. And that's when I realized, I looked at that and I was like, what's the key difference? What are they doing that I'm not doing? And they all said the same thing. And it was mentorship. At that point, they were in Wealth Genius. And that was the key factor to me. I, kind of realized that if I wanted to level up my game, that I had to be where people were doing the things I wanted to do.
Yeah. Okay. So I've never been on one of the retreats. And so I was curious to see how your experience was. It sounds like you really walked away with a lot of value from it. And it's interesting. So you did the retreat before actually joining the community. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And this was when Wealth Genius had just started, before it was even 100 members, right? So it was, at the very, very beginning. And I had participated in the retreat. And it was really interesting because even with that experience, it was a really, really great investment for me to kind of have a mastermind. It was still a real estate focused business, but then having that spin of, hospitality and short-term rentals. And that was my mindset going in, not necessarily to get coaching or become part of the community. And I got more than I expected from that initial mastermind. My business was able to grow from a real estate perspective plus a hospitality perspective. They gave me so much. And I don't even think it was a year, but within a few short months, I realized that there was so much more that the community had to offer. And again, after joining, that experience was completely 10x. And my business grew even faster. My portfolio grew even bigger. We expanded to the US. I was able to leverage that business to get an E2 visa, which is an investor visa, where that will allow you to reside in the country. So all of these different concepts I learned after joining Wealth Genius. And so the retreat changed my life. If that was 2x, joining was the 10x. It just really propelled everything.
Very cool. And you are now a coach yourself,
yes,
correct? Which is cool. And so are you getting something out of, sharing this and helping other people? Is that something that you envisioned yourself doing previously?
When I think that is maybe even what attracted me to the community, what attracted Alfonso and I to each other. Because, when I had went to the retreat is because, I had met him and he had invited me out saying that he could, being a part of the group would definitely help me. And he kind of saw how, with a mastermind, I can grow my business. And yes, that's something I absolutely love to do. I feel like it's literally my purpose to help people in this particular way. I think that in this day and age, in this time that we're living in this economy, people work very, very hard. And inflation, it's a real truth of, the matter. And I want people to realize that, whatever career or job you're in, I think sometimes it's especially difficult when, people start making multiple six figures, or like doctors, lawyers, to try to consider, how they can get some of that time freedom back and achieve that fabled work-life balance, right? Because that's it's a very high income to replace. And because I was able to do that, I want to be able to share the formula, because if it could work on, $500,000 scale, it can work on, 100,000. And I just want to empower people to get their lives back and get the income and the cash flow they need to not only enjoy the day-to-day and get their time and their freedom back, but also build a legacy for their families, friends, show people, you know, that there's a way to do it. I spent a lot of time kind of speaking about it on my own before joining Wealth Genius. But one of the main thing that Wealth Genius provided, with not only giving me the personal growth and the business growth, was also a platform for me to be able to help people.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most exciting thing. Like, so I love coming up with, you know, that financial plan that can help somebody replace their income.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm happy to hear that. And so you talked about getting your visa, your E2 visa for the US. And so you've actually made the move there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what made you choose the place you chose?
Well, one of the reasons we chose that location is, you know, we had visited it, and it was about a few years ago, and we decided, you know, to relocate to Huntsville, Alabama. And we visited this location.
Which seems really random.
Yeah, it does seem really random. We visited this location. My husband has family there.
Okay.
And, one of the things we loved, it had all 4 seasons, right? But not too much of all 4 seasons. It's like just enough,
Yeah,
right?
not
There's
like
just
Huntsville,
enough winter.
Ontario, those
Yeah,
4 seasons.
Yeah, there's just like, you can have, I don't know, you can like in the morning go outside and need a jacket and steer your breath, and then by the afternoon you're like wearing shorts. And it's also really interesting because it is so up and coming. It was voted one of the best places to live in, I think, like 2022 and 2023. It was the second best place.
Okay.
There's a lot of people emigrating there from different places in the US. So it's really difficult now to even really find like locals, people who grew up in Huntsville. And it's, you know, they were getting a lot of money and tech and infusions for, you know, tech. This area is now considered one of like the tech hubs of the South.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So like it's
little did you know.
Yeah. It came with so much. Like it was like families there. The weather is great. The people are nice. The real estate is good, you know, and like it's great for short-term rentals and mid-term rentals. I don't know, when we kind of touched the soil, it spoke to us, and that's where we decided we'll start off and see where, you know, life takes us.
Very cool. Yeah. I had no idea. So I learned something today. That's great. And so is Airbnb short-term rental still a viable option in 2024 as an investment strategy?
Absolutely. Okay. I believe in short-term rentals in Airbnb. Airbnb is a platform, but the concept of a vacation rental has always been around, and its, you know, sister concept, a business or travel rental for, you know, corporate stays, has always been around before Airbnb came up as a platform. So, you know, I think it's really important that people understand that concept and not really focus as much on Airbnb, so that if they're interested in the strategy, they're picking the right markets in the right locations, getting the right licenses, so that they can build a sustainable and scalable business.
Right.
And, you know, as I mentioned, one of the reasons I love it is it works for my lifestyle. You know, it's one of the ways I figured out I can own a property in the south of France, or a beach in Jamaica, or a villa in Mexico, and enjoy them when I feel like it, while making money when I'm away. Yeah,
that's great. And so do you use other platforms then?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many other platforms, all called online travel agents are one of them, specifically for the short-term rental space. And there are, you know, pretty much everybody's online. So even, you know, connecting with businesses and other sort of corporate rental companies and insurance companies, there's a ton available for people interested in this space.
Okay. And you do midterm as well?
Yeah.
And so obviously you have your process, right? And you've learned to become a superhost, and we can talk more about that. But do you have kind of like a system you can just put in place anywhere, or is it different depending on the location and the type of client you're going to have, or type of market that's there? Is it Like how much can you just go into a place, a new city, a new location, and just cookie cutter your system?
Yeah, that's a really great question. The system itself works, but you hit on something really key, which is that there is a difference in the types of markets, right? Depending on the maturity of the market, where it's located. Some are going to perform better as vacation rentals, and even within that space, some are going to be better as couples destinations versus large family destinations. And it's really important to understand the nuances of the location and the best strategy that's going to work there, because that also impacts where you advertise, right? So one area may be really great for advertising on Airbnb and VRBO, where another area may be focused more on Asian tourists, and they use different sites like Agoda, right? So it's just really important, no matter where you're geographically located, to do your research and understand who your guests are. Because again, a lot of people go into it thinking all they need is Airbnb, but if there's a change in the Airbnb algorithm or booking patterns with Airbnb guests, which is again a particular demographic change or go down, they're kind of stuck, and they will end up exiting when there's actually nothing wrong with their location. They just needed to advertise in the right places to attract the right type of guests.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And so have you visited every location that you have, or do you obviously manage it remotely, but do you try to get multiple locations in one city or one state, for example, and then kind of build a team out there so you can expand there? Or are you looking at different areas altogether?
Yeah, so I have not visited all the locations where we have property, but what we do is it is a great, I personally love economies of scale. If you think about, having just one house, you still need a cleaner for that house, a handyman, the same teams, right? And I find that the sweet spots for be able to hire a full-time team is about 5 units. That way your handyman, your boots on the ground person, your cleaner can be busy enough of the time to focus and dedicate to you. And that allows you to grow and scale your business. Plus, it gives you a variety of ways to take care of your guests. For example, if you have a number of studios in an area, that may be great for a small sports team or something where you have multiple people coming in. And that can also work well for individual business travelers who may be not connected or unrelated. So you can leverage a variety of strategies that way, and cater to different types of guests. So I think, there's definitely a strategy for the location. We don't always visit those locations, and it is important, I think, to have multiple units. It just allows you to scale bigger, and because you'll already have a fixed cost, and it will give you enough bandwidth to do X amount of business before you have to kind of hire more people. Gotcha.
Makes sense. What are some of your favorite places?
Some of my favorite places, I love Mexico. I mean, I love the lifestyle. I love the food. I love the people.
Yeah.
I've been able to build amazing teams with amazing people. I find it's one of the easiest places to do business with. Some of the Mexican laws can be challenging for foreigners,
but they're also lax in some areas.
But they're also lax in some areas, and the people I just find are really, really great. So that's personally my favorite place. But I mean, every location has things that are cool about it. I like Charlotte. I don't know, the city is really good. There's just, and even Cleveland, sometimes people are like, why Cleveland? But I'm like, there's a sports team. It has my favorite steakhouse, right? And there's just I find these little things that I enjoy about each of the different cities when I do go visit. And I think that's one of the things I love about Airbnb. I love travel, but I also love consistency and the comforts of home. It's kind of weird. So I like knowing that if I'm going to show up to a location, my favorite spot, I can go to Polo Loco, they're open till 8, and I know what I'm going to order when I land. You know what I mean? And I know the number I'm going to call to have the groceries delivered or the wine delivered. And I don't know, that's just the way I like to travel.
Yeah, of course. Have the best of both worlds. That's all great. I love to hear all that. So we've talked about all the good stuff. You must have made some mistakes along the way. You must have some horror stories. Can you tell us?
Yeah, definitely mistakes, definitely horror stories. And I don't think they ever go away. I think it's just a matter of getting in the game and getting experience to kind of overcome them. But I think, the most challenging thing is, bad guests not doing proper screening.
Yeah.
We had, one guest who wanted to book to do a video, adult. We've realized after it was an adult video, right? I mean, like not screening. I mean, he did disclose what what they wanted to do. So, and parties, we've had it all. And I think, again, it just really comes down to like knowing the systems, knowing the processes to kind of put in place and protect yourself. We recently had in one of our units, there was like a flood above, and all this water came down and flooded the property. And then at the same time, in another property, there was like a power outage. The team forgot to pay the light bill on time, right? Then the internet went out, right? It's like, these things happen.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is just, it was really how we managed it. We were able to get it, like it was late, fortunately, and we were able to get it turned on the next day. And we're like, just a little brownout, and here, discount on the night, right? And just addressed it head on. And we're like, hey, it's Friday night. Why don't you go out on us? Like, here's a free taxi, and the guests were happy.
That's big. See? Yeah. So figuring out how to become a Superhost and then maintaining it obviously is challenging. But I think, like to your point, if you're proactive on these things, because there's always going to be some issue, not with every tenant, hopefully, but there's going to be issues at every property at some point. So to be able to stay proactive on those things, I think most people are understanding like, okay, this is out of their control, but they're helping me out in this sense.
Yeah, I think the secret is responsiveness. Yeah. It's not that things don't go wrong, but one, it's how you deal with it and whether or not you do respond. Because sometimes, and I find this with my team and something we kind of coach on, is when something goes wrong and sometimes you are at the other end of that, you're not sure how to respond to the guests. So you'll leave them waiting. And if you put yourself in their shoes, if anybody's in a situation where they've been driving for 8 hours and they're at the property and they're putting in the code and it's not working and you're lefting them on red, they're even more so frustrated. But if you're able to get back to them in like 1 or 2 minutes, like we have our SLA, we want to respond within 5 minutes, just saying, hey, Morgan, I see that you're trying to get in and you're having trouble. Give me a minute. Let me look that up for you. You know what I mean? Then at least that person feels
they know you're on it.
They know you're on it. And I think that's true for everything. When something goes down, we are like respond immediately, acknowledge the issue, apologize for the inconvenience, and let them know we are working on it ASAP. And that is like literally the most important thing, because for those of you on Airbnb, there's a bit of, I don't know if it's politics or policies that you kind of have to play as a host, because even though as a host, you try to do everything right, the guests can still call Airbnb and complain when an issue goes wrong and potentially cancel their reservation, and, get a refund. And I told you the story where we had like a flood and water had came down from the unit. That morning when he let us know, it was about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. We had somebody at the property by 10 a.m. And we were communicating all of this in the Airbnb messaging chats. The gentleman then went to sleep and he woke up at 5 p.m. and then he let us know, hey, with the water, the carpet's all wet. We had somebody there by 7 p.m. and we let him know we cleaned up the carpet. And, we took care of that. Then he arrived home, I think at 10 p.m. and was like, hey, but because the carpets were wet, it smells. And we're like, okay, we'll send somebody in the morning. I woke up that next morning with a message from Airbnb support saying, hey, the guest contacted us. You had this issue. What are you doing about it? Please respond to us or we're going to cancel the stay and, give him a refund. So being able to show on that Airbnb chat thread that when I responded, I'm proactively taking care of it, and keeping all of that conversation on Airbnb, they were able to see that, yes, you're taking care of everything, it's being addressed, and they sided with me. So it's very important, again, to document what you were saying with the guests on Airbnb, not another platform. I did say WhatsApp, but when issues arrive, it has to be on Airbnb, and to be responsive, because had I had not replied, and the guest was going through it, they would have every reason to be like,
right,
let me just cancel and, refund him. And he was there for a month.
Oh,
and
okay.
It was like 2 days before his stay was going to end. So he was trying to get a refund for the entire thing. I mean, good for him, but it didn't work.
Fair.
Yeah. It didn't work, right? Yeah. But it's things like
but he
that.
knew that like he had 26 days or 28 days of a good experience until that happened.
Yeah, but people want to get it's tough times.
Yeah,
and people want to get what they can get. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you can get a free stay, right? Because of one day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if you had offered the free stay, then sure, that's one thing, right? But
absolutely not. Right.
Yeah. So I'm curious. You briefly went over the story about the shooting a video, shooting a movie, shooting.
Yeah.
How did that go? Was it?
So we had, when in doing our research, we realized what type of company they were. Okay. Right. But I mean, sometimes there's what I noticed with like new Airbnb hosts, there's a scarcity mindset. There's like, somebody's booking, I'm going to take this booking, take it right away. Yeah. And no, you don't. And if a guest books with you, and
so did you not accept?
No,
it?
we didn't. We accepted the booking, but then we were able to cancel it because we let them know.
I wanted to see how it was left.
Yeah, no, yeah. So we let them know that it was we didn't think it was appropriate and in violation like of the terms. It's very important to
Is that violation of the terms?
So there's an option to ask if they want if you're allowed to do video.
Okay.
We automatically say we don't do video, but because
any type of video, like music video,
any kind of video, it's an option, right? So they have to say, but like people will ask anyway if they want to circumvent the rules or like if they want an event or like something, right? Which is fine as long as they ask. And we were going to allow it, but then when we found out the industry, we just kind of watched that.
Because I would, I mean, who knows? But I would feel like they would probably be cleaner than someone else at the end, just because they know that what they're there to do, and it's like
maybe
it's a business as well, right?
Yeah. So maybe we're gonna find out. So.
I had an amateur version of that happen at one of my Airbnbs once. They didn't inquire. I don't know if there was video cameras involved, but there was definitely things going on because I had to drop off towels, and so I was like, by the way, I'm going to be bringing by like clean towels. And they're like, we'll be out for dinner at that time. I was like, it's fine. I'll just go in. I'll leave them. No problem. And they had everything set up and ready to go for after dinner, I suppose. And I didn't see any cameras. There may have been cameras involved, but there was definitely an event of sorts happening, a group event. So
a group event. Well, so I've never experienced that, but we've definitely seen the remnants of past party fun. Yeah. Right. Whether it's condoms left behind, like all of that other stuff. Yeah. Even smells. They're all there.
Yeah. I mean, this. I don't know if we'll cut this from the pod or not, but they did not do a great job of cleaning up. The sheets were just on the floor in the corner, wet, very wet.
Very, very wet. Yeah.
But anyways, that was my little experience. I've Airbnb'd a little bit here and there. So cool. But that's great. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No, there's always a problem.
Yes, always something, right? But having a team in place, having procedures in place, I think, you can help mitigate any of those risks. Any tips for anyone who is interested in getting into that strategy in 2024 and moving forward?
Yeah, I think my tip would be to kind of do the research yourself. If it's something that you're interested, there's a lot going on in the media. Absolutely be cognizant of that. But if you're thinking about getting started, think about how it would work for your lifestyle. Do research, make sure you're picking the right places,
right,
and go from there. I personally believe it's a strategy everybody should do if you're interested and invested in real estate. I think it's a great way to increase your cash flow with a relatively small investment. And again, depending on what city or state you're in, you can also kind of limit some of those landlord rules. And I think it's a great addition to any real estate portfolio. A combination of long-term, short-term, and mid-term, where it kind of makes sense. It gives you, that stability and the NOIs you need with that, what I call like the cherry on top of that cake, that little bit of extra. So yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. And so would you say that like area and the rules that are in place in those areas would be one of the most important things then to pay attention to?
Yeah, definitely. And also pay attention to the rules and pay attention to the strategies, right? Like whether you're doing short term or midterm. Midterm is when you rent it for like month to month, 28 days. I think if short term doesn't work, midterm is the next best thing. And just know the rules and play within them.
And what would your advice be for cities that haven't established rules yet?
Talk to them, contact their local law office or the city planning office, figure out what they are drafting. There's usually a draft ordinance or something in place. Right. And at this point in time, not many people have not considered it. Many cities have not considered it. So even if it's not formally in place, I'm sure they're thinking about something. So find out and then follow along with that.
Right. Makes sense. Cool. Thank you so much. If people want to learn more about Airbnb, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me at...
Sorry, I keep saying Airbnb, but I guess we'll call short-term rental, right?
No, it's all good. I love Airbnb. Yeah, but people can find me at Donalta Hall, Donalta, Hall, Hall, at either Instagram or Facebook.
All right. We'll link all that below. And thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. It was great.
Yeah. Thank you for joining the Little Did You Know podcast. Thank you to Donalta for being here today. She gave us so much insight into the short-term, mid-term rental and mentorship and all that beautiful stuff. If you're interested in getting in real estate investing, give her a follow because there's nothing but gold on her page. Let's go.